Alright, YouTube, it's time for the Occult video 135 on cursed objects and locations. Of course, spooky dooky haunted castles and graveyards and, the Hope Diamond and stuff like that. My thoughts on it are as follows, and I got into a very small amount of this when I wrote Fruits of Eden. I believe in the final chapter, right before the conclusion, I threw some of this in. I generally relegate the concept of a location or an object, not a person or something. That can have to do with luck. When an object or a person are said to be cursed, there's a lot of negativity surrounding them. It can be just an extension of human sort of psychological trauma. That is like, oh, this is a battlefield. Lots of people died here, very sad, they suffered. It was all muddy and there were rats eating them, their festering wounds and stuff. So it must be haunted. It's like, creepy and very negative because of the backstory. And this is how urban legends can spawn. Sometimes it goes a little bit beyond that. It's like the Hope Diamond, where a lot of people who have, actually owned it seem to get screwed an awful lot. Part of that might be due to the fact that they happened to have something that was basically priceless at the time, so there'd be a reason for others to screw them. But I do believe in negative energy. You can go, if you go through a city, for example, if you go through a town, some place where people live, and you visit different neighborhoods, you're going to get a different sort of energetic feeling from different places. One neighborhood it'll be very clean and shiny, and maybe almost too sterile in some cases, true post-technocratic sort of style, really postmodern, and it feels a little weird, honestly. I've encountered places like that. Then you go to an area, and it's seedy, it's kind of ghettoized or something, and it just looks run down, and it feels run down. It affects your psychology. Then you go to some place, it might be, quite nice. It's lush, and there's, people with their, little inflatable swimming pools in the playground and stuff, and sort of like Sesame Street style, you'd think sort of stuff. And it's very happy and bright colors and all these other things. Lots of gardens, maybe. And different people react differently, let's face it. To these sorts of things. That's an extension, by the way, when people are into like paranormal research. A lot of the people that are into paranormal research have a tendency to gravitate towards that creepy side in an aesthetic sense. You see a lot of people who are into the darker side of, they dress in dark clothes. Maybe they're not like actually like gothic or an emo or something, but they have a more of an appreciation for that sort of thing, and it just ties in with their other interests within the paranormal. Within the occult, maybe they're into the blacker side of magic. Some of the darker, the curses and the demons more than they are, crystal healing and stuff. Even within the occult, you see this interplay. I can't remember which video it was, but I denoted the trappings of occultism, sort of the surroundings that people use for a ritual space and so forth. And they're tens within cultures. It's not always the same cross-culturally. Within cultures, there's a tendency to surround yourself in that ritual context with things that roughly would coincide to what you are attempting to do with the occult. For instance, if you're doing a lot of healing stuff, maybe you have like dried herbs hanging everywhere and lots of crystals and a little fountain and stuff, and you've got, some nice windows facing out into a nice scenic view, and it's sort of like stereotypical hedge Wicca sort of stuff. If you're doing dark magic, it might be poorly lit, kind of a windowless expanse with a stone floor and just like, demonic seals everywhere and, really spooky looking like black leather volumes lining the shelf and vials of blood and stuff like that. And it gets into this almost Hollywood takeoff of the imagery. It can be real within practice, simply because people have been exposed to that sort of imagery, even in an authentic Hollywood sense, and they begin to emulate it because it works upon their psychology. They were raised up with that sort of dark and light dichotomous imagery, different imagery associated with different types of ritualism, different types of occultism. For objects and locations and things, I've spoken of, for instance, the idea of consecration and desecration, the concept that something that's been used before within a ritual context, it can carry over psychologically, at least, to other people. Some of this gets into the strictly secular. You don't need to have deep-set spiritual views to understand how this sort of thing can work. You can simply say, if you're a secularist, you're not into the occult per se, you can still admit, yes, when I go to certain locations, Even just, just go out into nature. There'll be, the brightly lit happy meadow, and then there's the spooky woods. There's a difference in how you perceive reality when you're in these locations. It's easier to imagine ghosts and goblins and witches and dark spells and so forth if you're in a dark, dimly lit, foggy swamp than if you're in, a very, very vibrant, colorful garden or something like that. Even just within the realm of nature, we're not even talking about human civilizations. The same would be true of a city. A person's actions, if they're in a nice neighborhood, are not going to be the same as if they're in the ghetto. There's a big difference between how people act if they've become acclimated to that. If you take somebody who is from a very tough area and put them in somewhere that's nice, it'll take them a while to maybe leave behind the sort of trappings of the street life or something. And vice versa, you take someone, they're from like the gated community with the immaculate lawn, and the neighbors saying, "Oh, hi Fred, what's up? It sure is a swell day." And then you put them on a lower class street, with the rundown apartments and the crack shack and so forth. And their behavior, it'll take them a while to adjust to the behavior that they're going to need to feel comfortable in their surroundings. This acts upon the occult too. And that's as far as locations go. For objects specifically, I'm not a huge believer in the concept of specifically cursed objects, like the Hope Diamond, or some sword that kills everyone that uses it, some chair that gets women pregnant, and all of these tales. A lot of this is urban legend. It's an explanation for coincidental events. Sometimes it's synchronicity. It goes a little bit beyond the realm of coincidence. That's true. But generally speaking, most of that is urban legend. What you're really seeing is that something is associated with negativity already. Other people around that object, their psychology changes. They already consider it to be cursed. And so their actions change when they interact with such a thing. And then it unbalances them psychologically. It can lead to self-destruction. We see this within a mimetic realm too. People interact with mimetics and they can become obsessed. And this is one of the things I warned people about in a prior video too. One of the biggest risks of the occult is becoming obsessed with it and destroying your life. Not you're being possessed by demons. Not demons are destroying your life for you, but rather your behavior is now altered in an untenable manner. You're destroying yourself. So you have to moderate your psychology. You have to be careful. You have to have a stronger will. If you've got a total addictive personality, low self-esteem, you got significant issues, and you turn to the occult, yes, you can harm your life. You can kill yourself that way. You can drive yourself to madness. It is possible to do so. It's the same concept as a cult. It's the same concept as someone who becomes a total zealot and they become a little too religious and they start killing people or harming themselves or something like that. It's the same basic principle. That's psychological. It's not even really a trapping of the occult. It's just an innate human tendency. But yeah, there are such things as locations that have eerie or negative or spooky energies. We've all probably encountered them in our lifetime. There's a spot, for instance, I go about back into the woods behind my house. Now, there are some spots out there that are they feel energetic. They're very scenic, colorful, a lot of wildflowers and nice rocks and stuff like that. And then there are a few locations out there that are they feel sterile. Because of the plants that are there, because of the terrain around them, they're kind of dead zones as far as life goes. There's not a whole lot going on. It's windless, even on a windy day, because of the way the hills actually function. There's no wind. You're not going to hear birds chirping. You're not going to hear frogs or any of that like cute stuff. There are no flowers or anything. Just some rotting wood and some mushrooms and a lot of half-dead pine trees. And those areas have a different energy, let's face it, than the brightly lit meadow or the patch of flowers or something like that. When we terraform the world around us in a human sense, we often seek to avoid that negative or spooky or sterile side. We try to inject invigoration into our surroundings to keep the energy flowing. And again, I'm using the term energy. I'm not going fluff bunny on you and using, the universal Mother Earth energy must be cultivated by feng shui or something. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it acts upon our minds, the way we perceive the world. It's much easier to be at peace when you're surrounded by a lot of nature, or you're in a nice neighborhood, even if it's kind of nature unfriendly. It's nice, it's clean, it's safe, and so forth. It has a good reputation. the people there are, friendly, they're low key. It's easier to be low stress there than if you're in a place repulsed by gang violence and every other window's broken. And every night, someone's car gets broken into. It's just easier in the natural sense. There are areas that are pretty sterile, not exactly, you're not going to have a picnic there per se. You might have an appreciation for that energy once in a while. It's a good place to tell ghost stories, but not necessarily the best place to go if you're, already a little bit uneasy. People, sometimes you get these reports from various parts of the world. Someone wanders off into the woods and never is heard from again. Honestly, or they black out or something. Now, some people try to use pseudoscience to explain this. Oh, they fell into a timeless vortex, or, there was some dimensional crap going on. They lost track of a couple hours because they became temporarily timeless. What I say is that their psychology temporarily has some sort of weird break because they enter one of these zones and they just sort of zone out and lose track of what they're doing. They get sort of hypnotized. And then hours later, maybe they wake up out of it. They're like, where the hell am I? Because they've wandered into somewhere that's more active. And all of a sudden, they sort of snap out of it. That's what I think is happening with those disappearances. Like the missing 411 stuff. Unless you admit, oh, yeah, there's literal Bigfoot or aliens or something. That's probably the best way to describe a lot of these cases. Literally, someone hits one of these really low energy zones. It just happens to synchronize with their brain. It literally puts them into a trance. They wander around like a zombie. They wander around like someone who's on hallucinogens for hours or days. They snap out of it. They wander out of the woods looking disheveled. Like, oh, where was I? I must have been abducted by aliens or something like that. It lulls them into a not entirely conscious state. At least that's my theory. That's personally what I think happens sometimes with these things. And go back and hear about tales of the Wendigo or something like that. Oh, yeah, if you go out into the tundra here, you're going to disappear. You'll never come back. Well, maybe people are sort of getting put in a trance by the sounds of the wind rushing across the snow. Who knows? It's possible. And we look at binaural beats and things like that. It's at least a possibility. We should probably test it out, see if we can replicate it in a scientific situation. But low energy zones exist. Cursed objects, on the other hand, I'm not a big believer in. Remnant energy there, it seems to me, is strictly psychological. That's about all. Peace out.